Get going. Again, good afternoon and thank you. Thank you so very much for joining us today. On behalf of VersaTech Global and KnowBe4, I would like to welcome all of you to today's session on fighting AI threats with AI native human risk management. So before we begin, let me quickly walk you through the agenda of today's session. It's a pretty straightforward agenda. All right. First, I'll start with a brief welcome note and introduction. Then I'll introduce Gulshan Shah from KnowBe4, who will lead the main session and share the expert insights on how the organizations can address AI-driven cyber threats. And finally, we'll wrap up with a short quiz. So I encourage all of you guys to stay till the end, as there are some exciting prizes to be won. Just a quick housekeeping note before we begin. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to post them in the chat. You can use Q&A section of the Zoom as well. Our backend team will be monitoring all the chats and responding to your questions. We will have time available towards the end of the session where Gulshan would be taking and answering all those queries as well. For now, we muted all participants to ensure that there is no background noise. However, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you at the time of Q&A session. So with that, let us get going. For those who don't know me, I'm Bhavesh Chauhan, Director at VersaTech Global. At VersaTech, we actually work very closely with organizations to strengthen their human layer of cybersecurity. We do this through structured security awareness and human risk management programs. As many of you already know, most cyber incidents today, right, they involve human element. And that is why organizations need to move beyond traditional awareness training forward to a more risk-based and measurable approach to human security. So on human risk management, right, there are typically four pillars that we discuss: risk identification and assessment, right? So we understand where the human related vulnerabilities exist across the organization. We focus on providing the targeted training and awareness programs that help employees recognize and respond to the threats, right? Technology integration, we integrate the technology and make sure that this process is as automated as it can be for both InfoSec team as well as the human resources leader, right? And then once the integration automation is in place, we ensure that there is a continuous monitoring and improvement as we proceed. So with that, let me introduce Gulshan, who is a regional account executive at KnowBe4. He brings over 8 years of experience across e-commerce, Q-commerce, and SaaS, and has worked extensively with organizations across the APAC region. With that, I'll hand it over to Gulshan. Gulshan, yes, if you can share your screen and take the session ahead. Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Just give me a second while I share my screen. Okay, I'm assuming it's up.
Yes, we can see that.
All right. So yeah, thank you, Bhavesh, for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for making some time to join this webinar today. I'm Gulshan. I'm the regional account executive from KnowBe4, and in today's webinar, supported by VersaTech and also joined by KnowBe4, we'll be speaking about the AI threats within the AI native human risk management setup. So we're not just talking about how we train your employees or your staff. We are speaking about a shift in cybersecurity these days. And as leaders of the space, as professionals of the space, you guys know that the perimeter has moved a bit. And it's no longer just about your firewalls or your security stack anymore, right? It's also a focus on your people. So we'll see how we can, fight AI with AI-driven threats. And at this stage, we're also no longer fighting humans nowadays. We're also fighting the speed of AI's development. And yeah, let's welcome ourselves into the era of AI native human risk management. So moving on. Now, a little bit about KnowBe4. we are trusted by 47 out of 50 cybersecurity companies in the market right now. And I think for us, we just don't follow the industry, we define the industry, right? So the question here would be, why trust KnowBe4 with your human risk management? Now, the companies that builds the world's best security products, the world's best apps, some of the biggest names in the industry that you can think of, one of our many customers. So right now we have secured more than 70,000 organizations that are working with KnowBe4, and also with a leadership team that makes up of cybersecurity veterans. We also provide the largest human risk data set on the planet right now. And somewhere to the right of the screen, some of the industry recognitions you'll see. We are highly rated on G2. We are the leaders in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. We are rated very highly on Trust Radius and also on Forrester Wave if you would like to research a bit more. Okay. Now, this session would be a pretty interesting one. We'll dissect the current Indian threat landscape, okay? And then we'll also look at how phishing has sort of mutated coming into 2026 and introduce the human risk management platform from KnowBe4. That's our best in suite answer to the human element of security, just like what Bhavesh had said earlier, right? So today is really about the bad AI versus the good AI, and where does India really stand in between those two? Okay. So taking a look at this slide, some of the trends that we have observed, be it from an industry report or be it from our many existing customers or customers that are currently working with VersaTech as well. India is the #1 most targeted country globally. Okay, I'm just going to let them sink in a bit and repeat myself one more time. India is the #1 most targeted country globally. And we see more than 100% increase in state-sponsored attacks year on year. So the reality is really very painful. About 13.7% of all global cyber attacks are directed in India. And I was having a conversation with one of the Indian companies the other day, one of the CISOs, and he kind of made it into a lighthearted joke. He said, it's a good thing and a bad thing, right? The bad thing here is that a lot of eyes are on India, but the good thing is that there's a lot of development within India right now. So a lot of companies are putting a lot of resources, a lot of their offices are moving to India. They're setting up a lot of factories, manufacturing firms, engineering offices. Even KnowBe4 we have an engineering office in India. So this kind of sends a signal to a lot of the cyber criminals as well. As much as the traction goes in India, it also picks up bad signals. Cyber attackers, they're not just looking at India for money. Okay, they're also looking into exfiltrating intellectual property, and I think that's something that's getting more of a bigger concern with a lot of our Indian counterparts, because some things are just priceless, right? You want to protect as much of your intellectual property as possible. So some of the examples you'll see, very, very active cyber criminal activity in manufacturing, automobile, airlines, BFSI, and retail. These are some of the top 5. And then we also take a look at the finance segment. This has been one of the most targeted industries in India. We see a lot of malwares, a lot of ransomwares, impersonation, theft, identity theft, all coming up from the finance side of the business or finance side of the industry. And one more thing that a lot of people overlooked in the past, I would say, working with the managed service providers and the vendors we have. So cyber criminals, they get a bit more creative as well. They can't really attack you, and they know the best way to attack you would be around the people you work with. So this is something interesting that we've seen in the recent years. Now, I'm just gonna put on the slide, let you digest this for maybe 5 to 10 seconds, and then I'll come back and say something about it. Okay, so just take a look, digest as much as you can. All right, so it's a lot of, I put a lot of screenshots here, but they're all around the same messaging, right? Search and cybersecurity, hackers using AI, hackers being hit by AI attacks, and how much it's costing a lot of companies in India. So on the top left, you'll see that on a government data report, a lot of these cyber frauds are costing Indians about 1,500 crores every month. That's a lot of money. And if we look at the headlines in general, there were, I mean, some of the headlines are showing slight decline in 2024 and all of that, but I think in general the scale of it is still quite staggering. So on the bottom right, you'll see a report that says 72% of firms in India are hit by AI powered attacks, and this is recent, right? But out of that 72%, only 14% feel ready to handle AI powered attacks. So this is just a food for thought for everyone on the call. Get some time to think about, if my organization gets hit by an AI powered attack, are we ready for it? Do we have the resources to handle such attacks? Do we have the team that understands such attacks, right? So some would be yes, some would be no, some would be I don't know. But that's something for you to think about after the call. And I think one more message from this slide would be AI is making cybercrime and cybersecurity a quieter, quicker, and also a cheaper approach in the future for a lot of all these organizations. So it used to be very expensive to conduct a cybersecurity cyber attack exercise, but now with AI, it's significantly cheaper. Okay. Now we're going to speak about fighting AI with AI, from the bad AI to the good AI and vice versa. And how do we then look at some of the advancements that are already in the market that is upcoming and up for you to adopt in the future to future-proof your organization against such cyber criminals. So even before we get there, how is AI really impacting our lives right now? A lot more than we realize. So if we take a look at some of the things that are on this slide, I'll start with smartphones, right? I'm using an iPhone. I'm sure most of you are using an iPhone probably, but there are so many things in the phone right now that uses AI, facial recognition, from the way you reply someone on WhatsApp, they understands what you're trying to say. The optimization of your device, these are all powered by AI nowadays, right? So without you realizing, there are AI powered elements into your daily lifestyle. And it's something that has skyrocketed, say, in the past 3 to 5 years. And I think one more thing that is good and bad would be the AI chatbot. So for me personally, I feel like the AI chatbot has been a huge lifesaver, right? I mean, from the way I work to the way I reply emails, to the way I research about a particular organization or a particular subject, it has been really helpful. But I've also spoken to a lot of, executives, organizations where AI chatbot now becomes a problem because employees are putting a lot of proprietary data into AI chatbots to churn an answer. And half the time they don't realize that these information goes to a repository somewhere and it's accessible. So we come in to provide a bit more insights. We provide the right training resources for the employees and the organizations and how we can manage this problem in general. So this is another food for thought, just right after this call, think about how you have used AI chatbots, whether you have put in information you're not supposed to, or whether you know of an employee or a team that has problems of it in the past or ongoing, and how you'd like to really manage that in the future. Okay. So if we take a look at the Titan Gartner here, right? They are saying that by 2028, 22% of cyber attacks and data leaks will involve Gen AI. 22%. And this was a report that they came up with late last year. I personally think this number, this 22% number, would only get bigger as AI develops. Now, something for you to think about. I'm sure we all have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You might have come across videos, articles, even music that uses AI. And sometimes you kind of question, is what I'm looking at real? Is this what it's supposed to be? And the answer is we don't know. Half the time we really don't know. And what it's saying here is that AI is now available to the masses. Okay, anybody could just go on the App Store or Google Play Store, download an app, put their face in it, and they become an entirely different person, right? So it's available to the masses. And I think the critical part where we start thinking about what tools, what devices, or what sort of softwares do these cyber criminals possess that is not really in the mass market, that they have developed themselves, that could cause a lot of trouble for us. Okay, and this is where we speak about the crossover point. Now, what is a crossover point? It's something I touched on a bit earlier, where when we look at something, we don't have that confidence in our own natural ability to understand if it's real or not, right? So, like I said, say a deepfake video of, for example, Taylor Swift, right? I personally, I mean, I personally watched some Bollywood movies here and then. I saw a deepfake about Deepika Padukone, and I was like, oh, I like her, but I know that's not her. So these are some of the things that you pick up over time. And I think when we take a look at, and when we reflect to ourselves, right, we then realize that we are not adept in making the distinction. We think we know, but then half the time we don't. And people who are, just doom scrolling, or people who are just surfing mindlessly, they usually don't pick up on such cues. And that's where the danger comes, because if there's something embedded within the videos, if there's a link, if there's an image or QR code that you can scan, people do it mindlessly because they were not paying attention, or maybe they just cannot distinguish what's real or not. Okay, so that's where the other sort of danger comes in. So about AI powered phishing, about AI powered cyber attacks, when we speak about the frequency and the quality, these are three things that we kind of derive from it, right? The first one would be the automation that comes. Now, AI is so advanced right now when it comes to phishing. You can set up a campaign really, really quickly, really cheap, and also the automation. You can send polymorphic phishing emails to 100 organizations in less than 30 minutes, right? And when we take a look at some of our industry benchmarks and reports, we see that 60% of organizations who have received AI automated phishing fell victim. So I think here is beyond our egos as well. What makes you believe that your organization would be set up not to fall victim? You would know better, and you would know how to react to it, right? And now when we speak about the cost, AI has reduced the cost of cyber phishing or cyber attacks by 95%. 95% is a lot. And when you speak about money, it's a lot of money, right? They now have that resource to send more phishing emails for less and use that money to develop their AI models, to develop more softwares, to even make their phishing a bit better. Okay, so this is a huge concern. And I think the last one here that we derive would be the LLMs, right? The ability for AI to mimic a human being is now super realistic. When you hear a voice note, when you look at a video, when you look at an article, look at an email, you sometimes cannot distinguish what's right or what's wrong anymore. So these are three things that we kind of take on from the frequency and the quality of AI phishing. So now we speak about the technology portion, and let's talk about secure email gateways, right? So this is one of the more basic ways to set up your security foundation, and how SEGs are living up to AI-powered attacks. Now, three baskets here. Let's take a look at signature-based detection, right? The threat of an AI-powered polymorphic attack. The problem with the SEG here is that they only detect known threats, right? Industry known threats, or threats that you have predefined. They pick that up, but they're not able to pick up polymorphic phishing attacks with no signatures to match those, right? So that becomes problem number one. And then if we look at the red flags, right? If you have set up your SEGs to work to pick up, say, misspellings, certain keywords, grammatical errors, AI solves that problem for the cyber attacker, because they just have to reword the entire thing and it wouldn't be picked up by your SEG most of the time. Okay, so that's problem number two. And now the third one would be the contextual awareness. When we speak about contextual awareness, at the tail end of the email, you have a human being that reads the email, and that's your employees. They sometimes can make a decision whether to reply the email, to report the email, to flag the email, because we have contextual awareness as human beings, but SEGs, they don't, right? So they cannot understand if there's a slight difference in the communication pattern. They cannot understand if there's a slight difference in the way that somebody is replying an email. So for example, I speak to Bhavesh a lot. If Bhavesh one day sends me an email that doesn't sound like him, your SEGs wouldn't pick it up because you have whitelisted VersaTech, for example. But I know Bhavesh, I know that, hey, this sounds a bit off. So that's where the human element comes in that the SEGs cannot detect. So how do we then ensure that the software can do it? And that's where KnowBe4 comes in with one of our products that I will explain a bit more on later. So if we take a look at phishing activities in 2026, right? I think we can leave that whole, hi, I'm a Nigerian prince, please send me $10,000 because I need to save the princess from a castle sort of email that we get 10 years ago. That's no longer going to work, right? So the phishing emails that we see in 2026, we're not able to distinguish it sometimes from a legitimate corporate email. Most of the emails we see are polymorphic, okay? They're obfuscated. And I think the biggest problem here, it's highly personalized. So the attackers are really smart, right? They understand your tactics, they understand your techniques, and they also use their own procedures and policies against you. So how do they do that? Now, let's take a look at polymorphic phishing emails. The current average phishing campaign size has dropped from 10 emails to 1.8. Okay, that's what we see. So this definition, it's like finding a needle in a haystack, right? Every email is now unique. And by the time your SOC team, your security team gets to one malicious email, the attacker has already changed the code for 10 other emails. And this just now compounds to 500 emails, 1,000 emails that you have in the organization. And it's going to be a lot of tedious work. Okay, so this is one of the bigger problems, polymorphic phishing emails. The other one that we usually kind of speak about also would be the compromised account usage. So we see that about 52% of attacks are now sent from legitimate whitelisted sources. And this is why one of many reasons why your filters are not alerting you, right? Why they're not sending you alerts to say that, hey, something risky is going on or something's going on, because the email is coming from a real person. The email is coming from a trusted source, and at a real company with valid SPF, valid DKIM, valid DMARC signatures. So how would anybody be able to tell if the attacker is not actually their trusted vendor? And this is also a product that we have called Defend to take a look at some of these things that maybe even us human beings can pick up. Okay. So some of the things that we've seen internally in KnowBe4 around AI and some of the personalization when it comes from emails. AI used to be there to help someone write an email, right? Now it moves on ahead from that. It learns how you type an email. It learns the way you phrase yourself. It learns the way you speak. And this is largely thanks to LLM, right? Large language models. The attackers now can deeply analyze your communication styles and then make an email, a deepfake email that sounds and looks exactly like yours. So when we take a look at some of the techniques that we see cyber attackers are using right now, right? Some of the key developments here would be attackers have access to OSINT, right? Open source intelligence. They can automate their research very quickly. They'll understand who your CEO works with, who your CEO replies their emails to, what sort of threats your CEO could be exposed to, and all of this information that you can get with OSINT. The existing tool sets that they have are also maturing in terms of development, in terms of research, in terms of orchestration as well. And one more thing that we see right now, they are able to send the emails in multiple payload formats. I would go as far as saying some of them would just do a spray sort of approach. Let's just spray the email and see how it lands and where it lands, and then wherever it lands, wherever it works for them, they refine that and they attack the company even deeper. Okay, so they only have one goal, right? To ensure that the success rate for the attacks remains really high and really efficient. All right. So I'm just going to digress a bit here with this slide. I'm not too sure if any one of you, or maybe most of you, have heard of Emotet. Okay, Emotet came out, I think, maybe almost 10 years ago right now. I feel a bit old, but I think it's about 10 years ago. It's a Trojan malware, basically, and it got sort of contained over the past few years, a bit resurfaced here and there. But now, recently, as of this year, we've seen Emotet coming back. Okay, and now it's incorporated with AI. So patient zero came from a supply chain account. Okay, and then all that I've said about AI personalization and orchestration of the emails gets into that malware. The obfuscation part here, so they are using VBA to VBA smuggling to deliver the payload, right? And on the polymorphic malware side, using the DLLs to basically change the signature and avoid the detection. So even something that used to haunt us in the past now resurface and has an AI element into it. So it goes back to the question at the start of this webinar, right? How ready are you to face such problems? Okay, how ready would your team be? Would your SOC team be? Would your cybersecurity team be to handle such a problem? You may have a playbook around how to handle Emotet 10 years ago, but now you see it resurface with AI. Do you have that same playbook that you can use to manage this problem? So this is another food for thought by the end of the call, right? So we've spoken a lot about SEGs and gateways here. I think one problem we see with a lot of the email gateways, we see that they miss a lot of severity threats, right? So as you look at the chart here, it's a bit of a wake-up call, honestly, because for every 1,000 users, a business like, say, Ironport, right, they have about 1,300 emails that are not detected. And then Microsoft Defender usually catches what the rest miss, but even so, the gaps are still getting wider, right? So how do we then ensure that we can layer ourselves with Defender, or if you are using Microsoft, otherwise Google, then we'll speak about it separately. But for Defender, at least, how do we then layer this? The first question to ask is M365 currently sufficient for you? So 365 is a great foundation, right? And I think the problem here is that the industry, a lot of organizations, they take it like a silver bullet. So the problem that we realized with 365 for the longest time here is that the cyber attackers, they buy their own tenants, right? They test their own phishing kits against 365 instances and find a bypass technique. So whatever you know about 365, they probably know more or even better, right? And when it comes to legitimate tenancy as well, the exploitation of the tenants, these phishing emails have the valid SPF, DKIM, and DMARC markers. So if you run authentication checklist, it bypasses it because they contain the valid authentications for you. And again, when it comes to contextual analysis, on a BEC front, 365 currently don't have that behavioral AI needed for them to spot communication pattern variances when it comes to BACs. So the question here is that how do we then improve our investments, right? You have spent money on 365, you have your SEGs, you have all the other vendors you're working with. How do we then ensure that we're all in sync? We cover the gap from a software and a human perspective. So this is where KnowBe4 comes in with the human risk management platform. So just a quick FYI, we used to be known as a security awareness training company. Now we have gone through a lot of development, we've gone through a lot of changes. We have coined ourselves to be the human risk management leader in the industry. And when we say human risk management, it's in the name, right? We don't just cover you for phishing and training. We want to cover you from, say, things like cloud email security, compliance, coaching, AI. And how do we then ensure that the human element and the software comes as one? So this would be the unified platform that transforms your biggest asset, okay, which is your users in the organization. It combines a few things here. So if you take a look from left to right, you'll see security awareness training. That is where you send your phishing emails, you send your training to your employees, and this becomes a regular occurrence, right? You want your users to be exposed to phishing emails to be able to detect phishing emails. Now, the cloud email security portion, I'll explain how Microsoft works with us, or we work with Microsoft for this. But now we also layer another portion after 365 to capture all the emails that might have been slipped through. And then another layer that adds on cloud email security would be the anti-phishing segment, all the emails that the software cannot capture. Now, your users have the empowerment to report these emails. It goes through our anti-phishing software. We will recategorize the email. We can do a ripping out of the email. We can do a block list of those emails. You will benefit from a global block list as well. Okay. And then we also have coaching. Coaching can be from the activities that they use day to day, from the time they switch on their workstations to the time they knock off work. For example, if they try to access a gambling website that is against your network security policy, we are able to send immediate coaching to your users in the form of a video or an infographic every single time they breach this. Okay, and when we speak about compliance, there are some things, for example, like DPDP, GDPR, PII, HIPAA, where organizations sometimes overlook or they just don't have the means to conduct this training. We have it, and we have it for India specific. So if you're looking to explore compliance training segments as well, we cover that for you. And to put all of these things together, we have our AI defense agents. So these agents, we have about 6, 7 of them, or maybe 8. We basically can orchestrate the whole platform for you, right? I wouldn't say sit back and relax, but I think your task here is really just to manage where your goals are. Let the heavy lifting be done by AI on our portal, predefine what you need to attain a certain goal. But the heavy lifting, the manual uplift, the user management, user risk score management, training, phishing, these are all automated. This can be automated. So imagine if you have 500 users, you're not going to manage all 500 people, right? We can help you do that through our AI defense agent. Okay. So if we take a look at some of the risks that we see associated with the channels here, now email still remains to be number one because it is the most commonly used. And I think in terms of the ease of phishing attacks, email still is number one. We see 57% of incidents, 57% increase in incidents over the past 12 months. Messaging apps are catching up really fast as well. So apps like Teams and Slack, because it's a bit more accessible for most users. People don't really think that much when they reply or when they click on the link on messaging apps. And I think when it comes to social media and smishing on corporate devices, we are also seeing about a 36% increased risk over the past 12 months. Okay, so now you must be thinking, okay, all of this that you just said, who holds this responsibility? Now, when we take a look at some of the insights that we have, 53%, okay, 53%, that's more than half of your employees, are saying that security is an IT problem. Okay, so I'm just going to say it again. 53% of all the people that we've spoken to, or industry reports, and put them together, more than half of the employees globally thinks that cybersecurity is an IT responsibility. It's an IT problem. It's a very dangerous mindset, if you ask me, because they feel no responsibility towards cybersecurity, right? Not maybe because it's their fault, maybe they just don't understand. So it's our job to then coach. It's our job to then explain why it's everyone's responsibility. And if we take a look at the chart again, only 29% of employees feel like they have a part to play. Okay, so we kind of need to shift the culture from this being IT or cybersecurity owned to an organization owned policy or organization owned setup. Everybody has a part to play. Everybody has repercussions about cybersecurity. And if we take a look at the drop down on the left here, 90% of the incidents are caused by people making mistakes. So some of them, they don't even know, right? They don't even realize that they did something wrong. And out of the 90%, I'm not saying all 90% would be malicious. It's just maybe they're too busy or maybe they don't check, but it can lead to a bigger problem. So have a chat with your team, have a chat with your employees, right? How many of these mistakes that people have done actually caused us problems or could have caused us problems? And how do we then manage this, right? So this would be another food for thought by the end of the call. So people remain to be the attack surface. Cybersecurity measures that organizations take, usually fail to cover the user aspect of things. And we still see about 68% of data breaches involve the human element, right? So there's a lot of reasons why, maybe because training is not personalized, people forget what they've been taught, you only do training once a year, they don't understand, and so on and so forth. So these are things that we hope to resolve with KnowBe4, and we have resolved with many organizations that are using KnowBe4 through personalized and approach to the framework. Okay, so this touches a bit more about what I just said, but we break down into two parts, inbound and outbound. So you will see that we still see about 29% year-on-year attacks through SEG defenses. 2024 alone, 94% of organizations fell victim to phishing attacks within the 365 environment. So this just shows you that even with M365, with SEGs, 94% of organizations still get some sort of threat coming in. Okay. The old way of doing things. So people used to just put signature-based detection, static rules, have a lot of banners all around. The admin is more reactive. When something happens, then they'll react. So how do we want to do it in a new way? We want to provide AI-powered behavioral-based detection for your users. Anytime they do something wrong, we coach them. Anytime they don't know, we train them. The M365 environment, we also want to provide real-time nudges, dynamic nudges to every individual. Whenever something happens, whenever something gets breached, we want to train them on the spot. The detection and response shouldn't be reactive. It's going to be more proactive moving forward. And I think the most important here is that for those of you on 365, we are fully integrated into the environment, and we look to automate your whole SOC operations as well. Okay, so I spoke a lot about Microsoft, and I spoke a lot about cloud email security. Just very quickly to brief, Microsoft has endorsed KnowBe4 as a first launch partner in the ICS vendor ecosystem. Okay, so both Microsoft and Gartner has done this for us. Basically, we provide one of the largest data threat sets in the world. We see all the threats that 365 have missed, that other SEGs have missed. And on Microsoft side as well, their data proves that we are the #1 product that has the least duplication detection layer to overlay 365. Okay, so now you can layer KnowBe4 within 365 to provide an additional layer of filters. Okay, so what is it that we have on a cloud email security function? We break it down into inbound and outbound. Inbound, we are now able to detect all the things that I've spoken about earlier: spear phishing, business email compromise, zero-day attacks. Okay, so we are using AI-powered behavioral-based detection. We are using our own LLMs to detect all of these anomalies. And then on the outbound side, we have email encryption on the protect side of things. And on prevent, we have intelligent DLPs that takes a look at data exfiltration, misdirected emails, information barriers that sometimes static DLPs would miss out. Okay, so these are things that we can sort of, I would say, prevent or minimize in the future. So just to give you a sense of how things would be, I'm not going to go through this in depth, but I think the point of showing this slide, I want to unify everything together onto one platform, and KnowBe4 does that really well. Okay, you can be working with CrowdStrike, 365, Google, Zscaler, Cisco, whoever it may be. We want to ensure that every action that comes from a cyber attacker is covered through all aspects of our products to ensure that it doesn't reach the user, or if a software cannot detect that and it reaches the user has the empowerment to then report this email and let it flow through the rest of the softwares that takes care of it. For example, the anti-phishing, the cloud email security, and also the coaching. Okay, so we want to cover you both from an inbound and outbound perspective. KnowBe4 has a very strong sense of making your existing investments work very well. And how do we then ensure that when we present this to the board, it wouldn't just be another software? It's a software that complements existing products that you are already using. Okay, so with that, I'm gonna end it here. I will be open to take any questions or any concerns that anybody has. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bhavesh,
well, thank
over to
you. Thank you so very much, Gulshan. I hope everyone found the discussion valuable and gain some insights. We